and welcome to another episode of Good Morning Enablement. This is one of our casual episodes, and so what we do is we like to share some of our experience. And this particular episode, we're going to talk about doing career pivoting. And what that simply put, that just means is, did you jump from one career to another? How did that work? Why did you take that decision? Is it beneficial to you to think about career pivoting instead of staying on one career path? So I'm joined here, obviously, with my co-founders and co-hosts, Matt Santa Cruz and Roger Jennings. And before we get stuck in, please, you'll really help us to make more videos like this. If you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe and maybe give us a like and put loads of comments in there. You can tell us what you'd like to hear from, who you'd like to hear from, and what you'd like to hear about. So let's get into it. And I'll start with you, Roger, if that's okay.
Sure. Let's do it.
So Roger, if anyone goes and looks at your LinkedIn profile, they'll see that, you've been in industry for a minute and you have had a diverse career. It hasn't just been one straight road. You've had a few different back and forths, including, at some point in your career, you ran your own business externally, which was a choice. Do you have a story that you could share with our listeners, that could encourage them to be bold and have some courage to make the career pivot? Maybe talk about one of those pivots in your experience.
Sure. Yeah, it's there's a dichotomy going on here. I don't know if it's because I'm both left brain and right brain, or if it's because I'm Gemini, because it's like definitely there's two twins always doing a tug of war. And I've either been very technical or I have been very creative. When I say technical, what does that mean? It means at one point in time, I was programming Java server pages. I was programming JavaScript. I was learning Perl back in the day and all sorts of things. Or I've been photographer and a videographer. So as my career evolved, where the pivot is that I want to talk about, once I got settled in, I was doing video production for quite some time. And I was doing video production as a contractor. And then at ServiceNow, I went full time doing video production. And I kicked and drugged my feet because I liked the idea of being a contractor because I felt I had more flexibility in what I would do. But it was a life choice to go full time. And that's what I did. And as I was settling in there, I think it was 5+ years at ServiceNow. About halfway through that, I started to see how technology was evolving around me. Where previously, when I first started, you'd be using a $150,000 camera to shoot a video.
Mm-hmm.
And then pretty soon you're using a $10,000 to $15,000 camera. Soon, you all out there know the story. Pretty soon everyone's shooting video on their mobile phone.
Yeah.
Technology is great. It made things more accessible and it made it easier to do things. And it certainly got the creation into more people's hands. But I started to feel that, the half-life of the video production career may be, approaching. And at some point in time, there's just not going to be a need for the type of video producer that I was.
Yeah.
Doing corporate work, doing training work, things like that. And my story isn't a Pixar or a Hollywood story. Mine is pretty much focused right there in the corporate world. I started feeling that, wow, I don't know, I'm able to hire contractors so much cheaper year over year, so much cheaper and cheaper. And it just didn't seem long-term for me. So that was when you were, for full disclosure, my boss at ServiceNow. And I had a good number of discussions about this with you. And we decided that pivot more into content development would probably suit me more. And that was something at first that was new to me. I'm going to say new and, in the air quotes, it was new to me. And, and I hadn't done it. And what we were doing is developing courseware in Articulate Storyline 360. And I was now, in addition to managing a team of video producers, I'm now managing a team of developers. And all of this is going to hopefully come together into a good story. I have this fantastic team of expert developers, and they know I don't know the platform we're using, and I could walk in and I could solve their problems for them. So their jaw would drop. How do you do that? How do you know this? Well, the thing is it's back to when I was, hard coding real code. There's a good understanding of logic and workflow, and being able to see, where you're going, and that allowed me to appear to be an expert on the platform. I know how to use it now, but in the beginning, I was just truly a manager, coaching them with ideas and pushing them along. And great. And major pivot, doing something completely different.
Yeah.
But what I learned from that is that it's always good to always be learning. And even though I'm currently back into the world of video production, I'm still learning coding and workflow and things like that, just because it interests me and I don't know what the future is going to hold. So the advice I always give to people is just stay up on things, keep learning,
Yeah.
don't get stuck. Because if I got stuck, where I felt I was with video, I might not have something. Or back in the day when I was doing web development, yes, I was hard coding HTML, but now you use, WordPress or WYSIWYG editors, content management systems, things like that. So a lot of the old school skills I have, have just become really specialized. And even to this day, you can use the Gen AI to help you figure out how to code something. When I'm listening to Matt, I hear stories of him and how he's using the Gen AI stuff to accomplish stuff and, help with WordPress pages and other web projects he's working on. It's just amazing. The key is you just can't sit still and move. And if you have a sense that things are changing, or my sense was, no, I don't want to keep doing video production, I need to differentiate and bring more and new value. So I made that change, and it was absolutely fabulous, and I learned so many new things along the way, and worked with so many new people. It's just amazing.
Brilliant. I mean, just the key things that I'm taking from that was, simply put, because there was a lot
It
there.
was a lot.
No, which is great, and I know that it was really informative, but I'm just going to pull out some key pieces and maybe just ask you one little question, basically to help our audience to see how they can apply that same, rubric, if you will, the thinking, the design, the critical thinking of should I, shouldn't I, and why, to their own choices and their decisions. So what I heard you say is you were in a monolith organization, which, for our listeners, it was HP, ginormous. You were photographing, Meg Whitman, Leo, all of these executives, and doing video production in a massive organization. And then you come in to do like maybe a smaller team, different kind of video production, managing a team inside, it was still a $2 billion organization, when you first got there, into ServiceNow. And in your journey at ServiceNow, you were offered an opportunity to expand your repertoire and pivot your career from solely focusing on, being that production manager around everything video in, end to end closed loop, to taking on now, seeing that journey of how the video gets embedded into learning and looking after that content development team, which I heard you say you didn't know it straight off the bat. It was, you were like, okay, well, maybe this is the future, because is the world of video changing because of the AI component that keeps coming in, and it was becoming, less dollar per hour, if you will, to hire the talent, to
Yep.
do video.
Yep.
So one of the things I just wanted to underscore verbally for our listeners was, there's no doubt the way Roger was explaining it, and I hope you can just validate that for me, but you had an element of fear and trepidation going into this new role. Is that a fair
Sure.
assessment?
Sure. Absolutely.
But you did it anyway. And you found out that the skills that you had did, way back when, translated into solid coaching for your team, even though you didn't understand the technology. And, please say it in your own words, but for me, doing a career pivot where you're leveraging other strings on your bow that you haven't used for years, and then all of a sudden they miraculously come into play, I think that's why people should be bold and take the risk of, doing that career pivot. What other, words of advice have you got for people thinking about it?
Well, I know a lot of people, because I do talk to friends and colleagues. A lot of people do have the fear of change and fear of the unknown. And I think that's why a lot of people stay still and don't evolve. But I, I try and be optimistic and upbeat, but really, I think this is a time that everyone should possibly have a little bit of fear, because AI is already here and it's growing, and there's going to be a pivot in everything, where people whose living is based on knowledge and applying knowledge, their jobs may be disappearing because all of a sudden that knowledge reservoir is available via the AI. So we need to all start thinking about how to pivot into more of the creator mode, where we're now creating content, creating insights, things that don't exist, things that the AI can't produce. So don't, if you've been in the career for a very, very long time, yes, you're going to be comfortable there, but you gotta evaluate, what's the long term for this. That's what I did with the video. I'm like, the tools are becoming so inexpensive, everyone's able to do it. How much longer is this sustainable? And I go, no, it's not sustainable. It's time to make a change. So that's what I did. So don't be complacent. Stay up on your knowledge. The more recent part of my career has been, in sales training, sales enablement. So, it's in the nature to want to teach, to want to learn. And typically that's why I think I'm always coaching people, learn something new. If you have time, when I had my team, if there was downtime, I would say take a course, learn a course. Don't just don't just sit and watch YouTube. Make your life better by learning something.
Or watch YouTube with a learning element versus
Of course.
just scrolling,
Yeah, I admit
like me.
that's what I do.
Perfect. Roger, thank you so very much. Very insightful. I hope that, that's going to really resonate with certain people who are in your world.
I think
And
so.
now, yeah, thank
I think I have a career pivot suggestion for you, Maria, because the prompt I gave you was very long and wordy, and you were able to clean it up quite nice. So I think we need to have a chat Maria White AI out there, because you did a great job.
That's funny. Thank you, though. I take it. I'll take the compliment.
It
A
is a
little kiss
compliment.
on the cheek. Thank you. And so now over to our good friend and colleague Matt. So Matt, you also have had, quite a illustrious career, predominantly from when I met you in the world of marketing, design, creation, from an art director perspective. So tell us your story. When have you had to do a career pivot, and what was that experience like? What drove you to it? Let's hear from you. I'm sure there are many, many people in your situation.
Well, thank you, Maria. Yes, I've been in different roles and different situations. A lot of the time it would be freelance or a contractor position. Sometimes it would be in-house creative for a global marketing organization or sales organization. So I've seen different courses of my career taking little pivots here and there. And one thing about being a contractor, for example, is the flexibility. Being a freelancer or a contractor, with a contractor, there's a finite date for your completion. Sometimes that gets extended, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad, depending on who you're working with. But there's more flexibility in those situations, for example. And if you're an in-house creative working for a company, you're a little more locked in, but it gives you that structure of the day-to-day, and you're guaranteed a check for that. So I've been in both positions, and I've liked them both in certain ways. But one particular pivot was when I had been working for different event companies or production companies, and doing events, global events for their sales conferences and just user group conferences around the world, mostly in North America. And that was fun. But the pivot I made, and I had been looking towards it, I had been interviewing for it to be a full time with a particular company. And at that point, it was really advantageous because that is when COVID hit. So there were no more events
Yeah.
right when I was hired, which was amazing. The timing around that was spectacular. So I'm very blessed to have been able to go into a position and not have to worry about finding jobs in an industry that was just hit very hard by COVID and the restrictions associated with that.
That's fantastic. And so you went, just kind of going to synthesize it, you went from many years in corporate, then you decided to go and, pursue being your own boss, your own consultancy, which, by the way, you've maintained it all this time, which is MSC Creatives, for those of you who are interested. And so then it was by serendipitous chance, because you said it worked out, because that is exactly right, what you said, that you had an opportunity to go from contracting into a full-time position. So tell us a little bit about, when you made that choice, were there any life events that were going on that helped make that decision? You Well, I mean, if you do know what's going to happen in the future, you should share it with us. But I guess you didn't know that COVID was coming. So, was there a life event where you made that definite choice? You went, you know what, this is what I want to do right now. And you went from many, many years of running that business to then coming into corporate.
Yes, having the check, the salary that you could count upon while starting a family, which is what I was doing at that point, was a huge benefit as well. Not having to worry about which jobs were coming and which jobs weren't coming, and when I would get paid. Sometimes the pay schedules are different depending on who you're working with as a freelancer, as a contractor. Sometimes the payments are a little bit longer than what you anticipate for your monthly bills. And starting a family also has some limitations on time. So it was a wise decision for me to take that full-time job, and I'm very blessed to have done that.
Absolutely. And I think that, your testimony is good for anyone listening. It's absolutely the right decision for you in your life if you're going from, corporate into consulting or corporate into part-time or the other way around. Because, yes, we want to do our best work in our careers, but you know what? There needs to be like, I need to enjoy and be passionate with what I'm doing. And to be able to do that, your life and your relationships and everything that's going on around you needs to fit in there too. So, yeah, that sounds like you made the right decision for yourself. And now, my follow on question is, you went back to MSc Creative. I'm excited that you're doing that. But, how was that? Once again, how did you make that decision to transition from corporate? You worked for some big companies, HP, ServiceNow, and Twilio, et cetera, and Cornerstone. But like, what made you make that transition back into running your own consultancy?
That's a great question, Maria. I think I would put it in terms of flexibility, just having my own schedule that I could set. I'm not saying that it's an easy schedule and that I'm sipping drinks by the pool every day. It's actually quite the opposite, but managing and all of the different projects myself and being able to be creative in my own particular way, setting up those relationships, it's both challenging and interesting. I like seeing a project from start to finish and being able to make an influence positively on the look and feel of a particular client's deliverables, whatever they may be. And I'm also learning new things. For example, I've never done advertising, and now I'm dipping into Google Ads and Meta ads on those platforms. I'm doing a little more in video than I used to be doing. So I'm learning as to bring up what Roger said about always be learning. Definitely always be learning. This year, I probably learned the most about so many things. It's still jumbled up in my head, but as the months and years go by, I'm going to feel more confident in all of the new tools that I've learned. Something's popping up every day, but I'm always trying to learn, always trying to do my Google tutorials or YouTube tutorials, or going on any kind of learning system and trying to figure out the tips and tricks to get into any particular tool that I'm going to use. So definitely always be learning, to Roger's point.
That's fantastic. And both of your stories and experiences are really resonating with me. I can, as you're talking, and you're finishing up, I'm thinking about, I think I've had several career pivots in, my whole journey. And the one I'm going to focus on though is the most recent one, because I think it was the hardest decision that I made, but I do believe it's going to be the most rewarding for me. And, there might be other people out there who are in the same situation. So over the last kind of like year, it's going to be a year soon at the end of March, but I came out of corporate and I made a conscious decision to say, I have done this role as vice president of enablement, three large organizations, and there was almost a little bit of not a rinse and repeat, but the challenges in each organization were identical. Not being able to execute on enablement programs, not being able to check the ROI, not having a successful sales conference. And, these are the things that were repeated in the organizations. And of course, over time when I was there, lots of things were changing. And so over that year, that I have been building this other business and working on GME, of course, but building my own other business out in the background, which I'll post on LinkedIn when it's ready to launch, but not now. The most difficult part for me was threefold. Number one, can I be my own boss? Very, very easy to say, yes, I can. I've done it in corporate. I can do it by myself. That's an easy thing to say. Anyone on the planet could say that. Yeah, of course, I could do it here. I could do it there. Not true, because you have to become the everything in what it is. You have to be, the CEO, you have to be the COO, you have to be the everything. You have to research the technology or delegate, or delegate to people. You're doing everything to try and make sure you're going to generate revenue for yourself and whoever you're employing to drive a business forward. So, I have made the career pivot. I'm very excited. It's in the early stages, but my advice would be for anyone else considering it, you need to make sure that you're a get up and get it done type of individual, because if you are not, everything you start doing, you're like, oh, I'll just work 2 hours today because I can manage my time. Or, oh, I'll just go out with some friends today because I can manage my time. If you're not putting in the effort like a normal business would, you're not going to make the results that you want. So it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done or I'm in the process of doing, because since leaving college / uni, I have been in a full-time position, and I've only ever taken a maximum of 6 weeks off in between jobs. I've just had this consistent career, corporate all the way. So for me, it's like a huge, it's like getting a divorce and then getting remarried, because that's what I've done. I'm getting married to myself now. I'm like, now I have to do it and I get to make the decisions, and it's exciting.
It's a good thing you're your own HR person.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, because I couldn't have said that. Oh, I understand. Understood. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, so from my point of view, it's hard. It's going to take courage to do any career pivot, whether it's inside an organization, which is more common, or whether you decide to go and do something by yourself, or with other people. It's hard. And so you just need to have courage, take the leap of faith, but make sure it's what you want to do. Because if you don't want to do it, but you think that you should, then don't make the pivot. Don't be forced into the pivot. Don't do the pivot. Make the change because you believe it's what your life is craving. It's a growth spur. It's taking a new direction. It's a work-life balance thing. But yeah, so that's mine. It's because it's very, very current. That's why. Otherwise, I'd have to talk about 4 years ago when I went from like a VP of sales, with hundreds of people, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, to going into sales enablement and thinking they were speaking a foreign language. So save that for another time. Well, is there any closing thoughts from your good self, Roger? And then I'll go to Matt before we close up.
It's just keeping yourself educated and knowledgeable is just so important. Don't have the blinders on. One of the things that you told me was, and people are scared to death to do this, but the only way to really know your value is, put your resume out there, do a few interviews, see if there's bites on it. Because if you're in a situation where you're being underpaid or under recognized, you don't really have any leverage and you're just in that silo. But if if you see things are good out there, then maybe it's an opportunity to make a change. And at the same time, if you're happy, it just validates that you're knowledgeable and great. And you don't have to go somewhere just because somebody asks you to go.
Absolutely. Lovely words there. Matt, what about your good self?
Just to say life is a journey. Things will happen beyond your control. May need to pivot whether you like it or not. So just be open to the change, because there's only one thing that's certain, and that's change. So just be ready for changes to happen. And if you need to pivot, just pivot, and you could do it.
Absolutely. And I think just to close it off from my point of view, Roger, you hit on something really prevalent. In good times, when you're in the job and you love the job, that actually is the time to go and put yourself out there, to go and take job interviews, because there's no fear or challenge associated to it. And something awesome might come to you, but guess what? You're exercising a muscle, so that if you constantly go for 2 or 3 interviews a year, even if you're really happy in your job, if anything ever happens, you know what to experience when you have to go out and really go and get a job, because it's from a place of need as opposed to a place from want. So try to be bold, take courage, and go and ask, colleagues and things like that. If you want a career pivot, just go and try and do it. It'll probably be the best thing you ever do. And with that said, again, thank you so much for being invested in watching us. We really appreciate you. We would love to hear from you. We're still babies in this world of podcasting and whatnot. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you want to be a speaker, reach out to us. Our emails are dead simple. It's matt@goodmorningenablement.com. Roger at goodmorningenablement.com, or Maria at goodmorningenablement.com. And with that said, have a great weekend, and we look forward to, sharing some of our insights with guest speakers in the future. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.